Hello everyone and welcome to my new video, another Topical Ramble video, and I know what you're gonna say at the same time. It's like bloody hell. You got a new Topical Ramble video out already? Yes I do, and I'm hoping this time it will actually have video with it rather than just a static screen that has been the case with my previous ones. So what did I want to talk about with this one? Well, first of all, providing this works, because I'm actually watching the footage as I'm recording it, I should be back now to putting game footage in my Topical Ramble videos, which is something that I've wanted to do for a while, and as I explained in my previous video, kind of touched upon it, it's not always been possible to do that of late, just simply because I need to invest quite a bit in updating my hardware and consequently software. But I may have found a workaround which will certainly be okay for the time being. Essentially, I'm capturing the footage off the consoles as I used to, but rather than try and record my audio within the editing software, which is what I used to do before because it saved a bit of time, I'm now recording the audio separately using Audacity, and I'm hoping that when I bring the two together, I don't have the colossal audio issues that I had previously, which was just like this ear-splitting screech and loss of audio that kept happening part way through. Now, I suspect this may work, but obviously I won't know until I've rendered the video, and consequently I won't know until I finish recording this. So that's kind of why I'm saying this now. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you're probably thinking, well, hang on a minute, obviously it works. Yeah, I'm just sort of freewheeling like I normally do. Anyway, the footage you're watching here is a bit of Star Wars Battlefront 2. This is I've not actually finished the game. I just was capturing this as I was playing it yesterday, and I thought, well, why not? You know, I'll give it a bash. The idea popped into my head actually while I was part way through playing the game, and I have been enjoying the single player so far. I don't think a lot of the coverage from some individuals that I've seen is fair. Dare I say it, in terms of being a fair representation of the game itself. I don't think it's fair, and I just sort of thinking about this kind of pushed me in the direction of this video, in terms of what I wanted to talk about. And with YouTube and in any kind of gaming media, we tend to build up certain individuals. This almost is a part two, I guess, of my Topical Ramble that I did last week, where I was talking about the changes that YouTube had made to its policy, and I touched upon how certain big-time YouTubers had a very dismissive attitude towards the smaller channels that were clearly going to struggle, and there was a lack of appreciation that it's not just subscriber count, but it's also, I think more importantly, is fulfilling the viewed hours quota. Now, for some of these channels, and I'm not going to call any out, I mean you gather some of the channels from when I'm talking about who I may be referring to, but ones that just put up video game news, shall we say, and you know, they're just basically reading out what somebody else has done, and they put up multiple videos a week that, you know, are between 5 to 15 minutes long. For them, creating a lot of viewable content isn't a problem, and this isn't a criticism, because what I'm doing here, you know, doesn't take me that long to do. You know, if I was making money off YouTube just doing this, I would fall into the same category, because I didn't create what you're seeing here. I mean, it's me playing the game, but in terms of the actual graphics and the sound and all of that, I didn't create it. I'm just playing it. So from a creative perspective, all I'm doing is, apart from obviously cutscenes like this, to me, just Luke Skywalker looked really tired in this. He does look knackered. Mind you, he has just gone through everything he went through with the Emperor and stuff, so one may be forgiven if he's looking a bit exhausted, a bit run down, a bit electrified. Anyway, yeah, the point I'm making is, like I say, I would fall into the category of those that could create a lot of content in a week if I so chose to do. But what about those creators that make music, that make animated films, that do mock-up trailers, but they actually don't take footage from movies, they create their own work from scratch? What about those people where it could take weeks, maybe even months, just to create one thing, especially if they're working by themselves? I actually watched a very much abbreviated and edited video of somebody that was showing how they put together music that they put up on their channel. There's a guy, Miracle of Sound, that actually does songs about video games, and he works as a musician outside of YouTube, but those are the things that he does. He's a gamer and he makes these fantastic songs about games. And I watched a video and he was really edited down as to the processes that he goes through, and it is really time consuming because he creates each of the instruments and then sings, and he has to bring all that together into one song, and the effort and time that's required in order to do that is quite a lot. This isn't a 5-minute thing, and plus the fact he has to work outside of that, he has to do other things. So although he makes money off YouTube, that supplements his income, that isn't everything that he does. He makes records as well. So for those people, creating 4,000 hours worth of viewable content a year is a more of a challenge. I'm not saying that they can't do it, but I'm saying it's more of a challenge. And it kind of annoys me when I see YouTubers that can put out a lot of content, and many of it they're just taking other people's work, like I'm doing here. I'm putting it together into a video and uploading it and putting it out there. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's not as time consuming. It's as simple as that. That those are just facts, and that's just the way that it is. And I think to put yourself on this high horse and say, well, I agree totally with the rules, try harder, work harder, I think is a pretty appalling attitude to have. And it's non-supportive. And what sort of upsets me a little bit with these people that have this attitude is, only a few months ago, when the apocalypse was really biting, they were doing a lot of the crying themselves because they were noticing their videos were being flagged as inappropriate for making money, and they were crying about it. And they set up Patreons and want people to support them on Patreon. Well, that's fine, that's fair enough. They went to the community for support, and they asked for support from the community when things went bad for them. And that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But to then show no sympathy, or very little sympathy, or understanding for those YouTubers who are now affected by these changes, I think is a pretty appalling attitude to have. And it shows a fundamental lack of understanding in the processes that some people have to go through in order to create content, just because they're not doing the content like they do, or creating the same manner of content that they are. And this is the problem. They have an audience, and the audience sort of supports them blindly. It's this, putting your faith or putting your belief or putting your trust and throwing your support behind people you don't know. And it's something that can often happen, and it's a natural thing, but they idolize these big YouTubers, these YouTubers that have got, you know, hundreds of thousands, millions of subscribers, you know, throw out content left, right and centre. They get all of this adulation and all of this support, and at the end of the day, they don't care. Like, if they don't care about you, they don't care about what you're doing. As long as they get their numbers that enables them to earn their living, they don't care. They don't care about other YouTubers. They've proven that. They've proven it with the attitude that they've had in just saying, deal with it. You know, just dismiss it, deal with it, work hard to deal with it, get over it. You know, that's a really fine attitude to have. Especially when you were, you know, really crying about this apocalypse and you were throwing blame and you're throwing shade on other YouTubers who've been caught doing stupid things, and it's like, oh, it's their fault this is all happening, blah, 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 blah. No. Now, you've got it sorted. You set up your Patreons, you got your support. That's fine. That's great. You know, I don't begrudge these people earning a living off of YouTube. I've not got a problem with that. But when you turn around and rather hypocritically turn around and say to YouTubers that suddenly find that their income streams, which again they probably are not living off because it's not enough, but it supplements income, to suddenly find that that resource has been switched off very arbitrarily, I hasten to add, I think it's unfair, and I think it reveals exactly what kind of people these big YouTubers really are, if they support that kind of behaviour, if they support that kind of attitude. Because what this essentially does at the end of the day, it puts a barrier up for people, for new people coming along. And this is, I think, what some of these guys fear, is that somebody's going to come along and obviously take away subscribers who are going to do things better than them, be more entertaining than them, and start to take subscribers away. I think it's as simple as that, because it stands to reason the more channels there are out there, especially doing similar things to what they're doing, the more diluted that audience is going to become, which means they get fewer views. I mean, even on a small channel like mine, when I started doing this years ago, there were fewer people doing game videos on YouTube. I got more views. So even, you know, now I get nowhere near the views that I used to get, because there's a hell of a lot more people out there doing this type of stuff. That's just the way that it is. And like I've said before, and I'm not wearing it as a badge of honour, I don't make money out of this, so it doesn't really matter. But they do. So if they start to lose views, if they start to lose subscribers, that's going to affect their revenue, and that's going to affect their income. And if they're relying on this as income, if they're relying on this for to make a living, they're going to react in the way that they are doing. It's not a surprise to me. It's just sad that the very same people that were screaming a few months ago about their revenue streams being limited, those very same people now are effectively saying to other YouTubers whose supplements to their income that they get off doing things on their channel, they can essentially get over it. That avenue has perhaps been cut off now. They need to get over it. They need to deal with it, and that's all there is to it. And I just don't agree with that. I'm sorry, but I don't agree with it. I think it's wrong. I think it's a piss poor attitude to have. And, you know, as I say, it's just reflective as how this whole thing has gone by and large. So that essentially, for me, kind of covers that side of things. But at the same time, there was also another point that I wanted to make, and that's how some of these YouTubers behave, certainly when it comes to the issue of how they sort of cover certain games. And there was a reason I chose Battlefront 2 as an example of this, because this game got a hell of a lot of negativity, and rightly so, with the multiplayer progression system that had been hampered by microtransactions. And the criticism of that was well deserved. But I think it also overshadowed what else the game actually had to offer. This game isn't just a multiplayer game. It has a single player campaign, which you're watching footage of in this video now. And it's interesting that I watched quite a lot of videos about this in and around the time that it came out, because I knew I was going to get this for Christmas. Now, I enjoyed the previous Battlefront game, even though it had no single player campaign. It did have skirmish modes and a few other single player modes that I got quite a few hours of fun out of. So, I was sort of the mindset of, even if Battlefront 2 came out and it was the same as Battlefront with just different settings and what have you, I would have been fine with that, because I still enjoyed the first game. I barely touched the online multiplayer, so I know I was missing out on a sizable chunk of the game, but I still got quite a few hours of enjoyment out of it. And at the end of the day, that's what really matters, right? Everything else is just garbage. If you can get some enjoyment out of the game, then so be it. And it was interesting that a lot of the mainstream YouTubers, again, some of these big channels, never really talked about the quality of the single player campaign that was in this game. I know it's not a long campaign, but from what I've played of it so far, and I haven't finished it, so this isn't by any means a definitive statement, but from what I've played of it so far, it's been really good. It's been well worth it. Now, even if the thing was only 4 or 5 hours long, I still wouldn't necessarily hold it against the game. There is going to be replayability factors, ramping difficulty levels up, stuff like that. There are always those things you can do. And I remember when I played The Force Unleashed 2, the game that had no multiplayer modes whatsoever, and that had something like a 5-6 hour campaign in that. It was all over really quickly, and I remember being shocked. This was a single player only game, and having a campaign that one would normally associate as being attached to a multiplayer centric game like Battlefront games or Call of Duty games, where the single player campaign is usually just afterthought, is probably a bit too harsh, because they do invest a lot of effort into them in terms of graphics, in terms of gameplay and storyline, but they're not exhaustive. These are not 12, 15, 20 hour single player campaigns, and it's just kind of interesting to me to see that why the coverage was kind of really skewed and didn't go into details at all about the quality of it and the story in it. These all seem to come after. In fact, I think it was a week or two ago I saw an article which actually did have somebody talking about how good the single player campaign in this was. But at the time of its release, everybody is just talking about the microtransactions, and fine, I think that is something that's important. I'm dead against them. I don't like them. I can tolerate them if it's cosmetic, but I still don't like the idea of them. But obviously, if they become tied into progression with multiplayer, then I object to that. Even though I don't play the multiplayer as such, I have the odd quick go in it just to see what it's like, but as a rule I don't. It's not the point. Just because something doesn't affect me doesn't mean to say that I can't have an opinion on something when I think that it's not good overall for gaming. Quickly tying back, YouTube's changes to the revenue doesn't affect me, but there's no reason why I can't think that that's bad for people who it does, and be irritated by it on their behalf. I think that, you know, just because something doesn't necessarily affect you, if there's a disaster on the other side of the world that doesn't affect me, should I not be upset that it's affected a lot of people in a really bad way? It'd be ridiculous to say not. You'd have to be kind of an emotionless sort of robot with no empathy whatsoever. And let's face it, there are a lot of people out there these days that have no empathy at all for anybody else. So, going back to this, it's like, I thought what they did with the microtransactions sucked, even though it's not something that would affect me, because I know that it affects a lot of people who enjoy playing the multiplayer aspects of this game and other games like it. And what worries me is this will eventually spill over into the single player, like it already has done in certain games. Don't think that there is this idea that, this will only affect one element of games. Believe me, whenever there's money involved in things, they will implement it in as many parts of the game as they can. We've already seen it. Go back to Dead Space 3 as a classic example of a game whose single player mechanics were hampered by the idea of introducing the microtransactions to the single player element, and they ruined what was a fantastic first two games. Dead Space 3 just played like a third person shooter. The whole survival horror element went out the window, and it to me felt more like a Lost Planet game than it did a Dead Space game. And I didn't get very far in it, in fairness, so maybe that assessment isn't wholly accurate, but the tension that was in the first two games didn't feel the same. It was just wave after wave after wave of creatures, and it just didn't have that same tension, which made the series the success that it was. And consequently, we never got another Dead Space game, and now Visceral have gone, nor are we likely to, unless it gets farmed out to another studio. So these things do spill over, and I know that Shadow of War, which is another game that I haven't actually played it yet. I believe that it's spilled over a bit into that, but as always, I reserve my full judgment until I've actually played the game and seen how intrusive they are. So being concerned about things like that I can understand, but we seem to exist in this environment where we can only concern ourselves with one thing, and if you do, it's like you can't concern yourselves with other things. Is it not possible for the people that lambast a game for having microtransactions in the multiplayer mode to actually cover what the single player mode is like? It's... But I guess that doesn't create the same degree of controversy. So it's not going to create the same degree of clicks. It's not going to generate the same degree of interest. So, therefore, it tends not to get covered. It's just marginalised, or it's mentioned in passing, or, somebody might do 10 videos about how horrible the microtransactions are in Battlefront 2 and how they've destroyed the progression system within the multiplayer, and maybe put a 10-minute video up as an afterthought about, by the way, the single player campaign's pretty good. And again, it's all geared around views, it's all geared around making money. It's cynical, and there's no balance to it, and it affects people's opinion and judgment, because like anything else, if you get a game like this and all you see is negativity around it, then you're going to think it's garbage. And your average person, that's only seen negative videos and negative headlines about something, is going to pass it by. And they might miss out on elements in the game that they would really enjoy. Buying this game doesn't mean that you support microtransactions. You only support microtransactions if you buy them. It's as simple as that. I found it kind of interesting that EA stripped out those microtransactions and then turned around and said at a shareholders meeting it wouldn't have, it wouldn't have a negative or diverse effect on the revenue that the game would be bringing in anyway, which kind of makes a mockery over the argument that microtransactions are needed to supplement the income of the game because of rising game costs. If that was the case, they wouldn't have dropped them. They would have gone away and they would have done something else. So, the argument for and against these type of things, I think, is very nebulous. And I would at times just rather people, you can mention this, but can we at least get an overall picture about the game? Can we get an overall picture about what the game offers as a package? Because multiplayer might only be one element of that package, no matter what percentage size the element might be. It's still only one element. So what about the single player? Let's have some videos about that. Let's focus on that. And that really sort of is the main gist. It's like, I think there was this idea of putting YouTubers, big time YouTubers, up on this pedestal, like they're false idols, and giving them far too much trust. People became dependent on them as being the fountains of all knowledge. And for me, what's happened in recent months, and what's happened especially since last week, has me seen that they really just are out there to make money. There are some who are good at what they do and are fair and are balanced. They're the ones that I think should get more attention than they do, and I enjoy watching their content because I do think it's balanced and I do think that they give a fair representation of things. But it should be really obvious to the ones that are just doing things for clickbait. If the mainstream of what they're doing is clickbait videos, and you'd only really have to look at their list of videos to see if that's the case, then guess what? Balance is not something that you're going to find there necessarily. They're going to be governed by which way the wind is blowing. That they remind me like wheat in a field. Whichever direction the wind's blowing, that's the direction that they're going to go in, because that's where the money is. And they're constantly chasing that. They have, they don't have a core belief or value that they certainly represent on YouTube. Their minds change all the time. Now, I'm not saying that outside of YouTube that they're immoral people or people without ethics, or people that don't have a belief, but they're characters. They're characters on YouTube. So everything that they're doing, it's like they create a persona, and that persona therefore is a way of separating their real selves from who they sell themselves at on YouTube. So they don't have to have that conflicting nature. It's like being an actor. That's not who they really are. When you're looking at an actor in a movie, that's not who they really are. And it's a way that you can separate the real you from doing something that might actually go against your morals. It's the same point on YouTube. They are creating a persona, and therefore for them, because they're doing that, because they're creating a persona up on YouTube, they can be wishy-washy, they can flip-flop, they can change their mind on the flip of a coin, because they don't have the same degree of investment, because they don't have to worry about this being representative of who they are morally. They might try to convince you that they are, but the reality is they isn't. It's just a false idol. It's just a construct. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more to come.